The massive Zolkarian fleet hung in space like a collection of obsidian daggers, each ship bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Edge, his four arms crossed in satisfaction as he surveyed the primitive blue world before them. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for what would become their newest conquest. Communications array is ready, Admiral, reported his aide, a younger Zolkarian whose scales still held the bright purple of youth. The translation matrix has analyzed their primary languages. We can begin transmissions whenever you command. Vextar's mandibles clicked with amusement. In his 3 centuries of service to the Zolkarian Empire, he had overseen the subjugation of 47 worlds. Each time, the pattern remained the same. Overwhelming force, demands for surrender, token resistance, and, finally, submission. The humans would be no different, despite the curious reports from the scouting missions about their unusual behaviors. Open a channel to their largest population centers, Vextar commanded, settling into his command throne. The crystalline screen before him flickered to life, showing various human settlements scattered across their continents. Let us begin the negotiations. The transmission crackled to life across Earth's communication networks, interrupting everything from news broadcasts to entertainment programs. Vextar's imposing figure appeared on screens worldwide, a towering reptilian being with 4 arms, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light, and eyes like burning coals. Humans of Earth, Vextar began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I am Admiral Vextar of the Zolkarian Imperial Navy. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. This is not a request. It is an inevitability. However, we are not without mercy. We offer you the chance to negotiate the terms of your surrender. He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. You have witnessed our fleet. 300 vessels, each capable of reducing your cities to vapor. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your military forces are insignificant compared to our might. We have conquered 47 worlds, each believing they could resist us. All learned otherwise. Across Earth, panic erupted in some places while others reacted with defiance or disbelief. But in a small office in Geneva, Dr. Sarah Chun watched the transmission with professional interest. As Earth's foremost xenobiologist and the newly appointed head of the First Contact Protocol Division, she had spent years preparing for this moment. The Zolkarians offer you 3 choices, Vextar continued. Complete surrender and integration into our labor force, with your leaders executed as an example. Partial resistance leading to orbital bombardment of your major cities, followed by the same outcome. Or total resistance, which will result in the extermination of 90% of your population before subjugation of the survivors. Dr. Chin reached for her secure communication device, knowing that within hours, every major world leader would be demanding answers she didn't have. But she also knew something the Zolkarians didn't. Humanity had been preparing for this scenario for longer than most people realized. You have 72 of your hours to decide, Vextar concluded. Do not test our patience. Do not believe your military can save you. Choose wisely, humans. Your species depends on it. The transmission ended, leaving Earth in chaos. Emergency sessions convened in every capital. Military leaders scrambled to assess their options, and ordinary people looked to the sky with new fear. But Dr. Chan was already making a different kind of call. She dialed a number that officially didn't exist, reaching a facility that wasn't on any government blueprint. When the voice answered, she said simply, "It's time to wake up the Peacekeeper." 5,000 miles away, in a bunker buried beneath the Swiss Alps, systems that had been dormant for years suddenly hummed to life. Lights flickered on in corridors that hadn't seen activity in decades. And, in the deepest chamber of the facility, a cryogenic pod began its warming cycle. Marcus Kane had been in hibernation for 47 years, waiting for the day when humanity would need him most. As the first successful human-AI hybrid, he represented humanity's greatest secret, and perhaps their only hope against threats from the stars. The pod hissed open, releasing clouds of vapor as vital signs monitors began tracking a heartbeat that had been still for nearly half a century. Marcus opened his eyes slowly, data streams immediately flooding his consciousness as his enhanced neural networks came online. In seconds, he processed everything: the alien fleet, their demands, their history of conquest. Peacekeeper protocol activated, came the voice of Arya, the facility's artificial intelligence. "Welcome back, Marcus. Earth needs you." Marcus sat up slowly, his enhanced physiology already adapting to full consciousness. "Show me what we're dealing with." Holographic displays materialized around him, showing detailed scans of the Zelkarian fleet. His augmented mind processed the technical specifications in milliseconds, identifying weaknesses and calculating probabilities. But it wasn't the ships that interested him most, it was the pattern of their previous conquests. They always negotiate first, Marcus observed, standing and stretching muscles that felt as though he'd last used them yesterday. 47 worlds, and they always offer the same 3 choices. They're not just conquerors, they're bureaucrats following a procedure. Analysis confirms this pattern, Arya agreed. However, every previous species either surrendered immediately or attempted conventional resistance. None have attempted alternative approaches. Marcus smiled, and there's something predatory in the expression. That's because they've never encountered humans before. Arya, initiate contact with the surface. Tell Dr. Chun that the Peacekeeper is awake and ready for deployment. What should I tell her your initial assessment is? Marcus began walking toward the equipment lockers, where his custom gear waited in perfect preservation. Tell her that the Zelkarians made their first mistake when they decided to negotiate instead of just attacking. They've given us time to respond, and they have no idea what kind of response humanity is capable of. As alarms began sounding throughout the facility and support staff emerged from their own emergency stations, Marcus suited up in equipment that represented decades of secret human innovation. The neural interface crown that would amplify his already enhanced abilities. The adaptive combat suit that could shift from diplomatic formal wear to military armor in seconds. The quantum communicator that would keep him linked to both Arya and Earth's command structure regardless of distance or interference. Peacekeeper protocol is fully active, Arya announced to the awakening facility. Prepare for immediate deployment. Above ground, the world continued to panic and debate. Politicians argued, generals planned hopeless defenses, and ordinary people stared at the sky in fear. But none of them knew that humanity's real response was already beginning. In space, Admiral Vextar reviewed reports from his scouts, confident that the primitive humans would choose surrender once they fully understood their hopeless situation. He had no way of knowing that in a bunker deep beneath Earth's surface, something unprecedented was preparing to respond to his ultimatum. Something that the Zelkarian Empire, for all their conquest of 47 worlds, had never encountered before. Something uniquely human. 18 hours after the Zelkarian ultimatum, every major government on Earth received the same message through channels so secure that most leaders didn't even know they existed. The message was simple: humanity will respond. Trust the process. Do nothing that could be construed as aggression. Admiral Vextar paced his command bridge, his secondary arms gesturing impatiently while his primary hands remained clasped behind his back. The humans were taking longer than expected to respond, but this wasn't entirely unusual. Some species needed time to process the reality of their situation. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Single source, very powerful signal. The humans appear to have an official response." Vextar's interest peaked. In his experience, species either surrendered within hours or began making threats about their military capabilities. Neither reaction ever changed the outcome, but the speed of response often indicated how much trouble the subjugation would cause. "Put it through," he commanded. The main display flickered, and instead of the crowded government chambers or military command centers he expected, Vextar found himself looking at a single human male. The being appeared unremarkable at first glance. Average height for his species, dark hair, calm brown eyes. He wore simple dark clothing that seemed to shift slightly in the light, and he sat alone in what appeared to be a small, nondescript chamber. "Greetings, Admiral Vextar of the Zelkarian Empire," the human said, his voice carrying an odd quality that seemed to resonate directly in the listener's mind. "I am Marcus Kane, and I speak for humanity in this matter." Vextar's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Where are your leaders? The generals? Your government representatives?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, and for just a moment, His eyes seemed to reflect light like mirrors. They're where they need to be, doing what they need to do. But this conversation is between you and me. You came here to negotiate, Admiral. So let's negotiate. There is nothing to negotiate, Vextar snapped, his four arms spreading wide in a gesture of dominance. I offered you 3 choices. You will select one, and we will proceed accordingly. This is how it has always been done. Ah, yes, Marcus said, leaning forward slightly. 47 worlds conquered, 47 negotiations concluded successfully. An impressive track record, Admiral. Very consistent methodology. But I noticed something interesting in your approach. Vextar felt a chill run down his spine, though he couldn't identify why. There was something in the human's tone, something in the way he spoke that suggested he knew things he shouldn't know. What do you mean? Your negotiations always follow the same pattern. Marcus continued, his voice remaining perfectly calm. Overwhelming display of force. 3 specific choices offered. 72-hour deadline. Very efficient. Very bureaucratic. Tell me, Admiral, who designed this protocol? The Imperial High Command. Obviously, Vextar replied, though he found himself answering more readily than he intended. The same approach has proven effective across dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. And you've never encountered a species that chose a 4th option? There is no 4th option, Vextar stated firmly. Surrender, resistance, or extermination. These are the only possibilities. That's where you're wrong, Admiral. Marcus stood up, and as he did, the chamber around him seemed to shift and expand. What had appeared to be a simple room revealed itself as a sophisticated command center, with displays showing data streams that Vextar's trained I couldn't quite process. You see, your approach assumes that the species you're negotiating with thinks the same way you do. That they value the same things, fear the same things, respond to the same incentives. All species fear extinction, Vextar said, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Do they? Marcus asked, and now he was clearly looking directly at Vextar through the transmission, as if he could see into the Admiral's mind. Let me tell you about humans, Admiral. We are a species that has spent our entire evolutionary history fighting each other. We have developed warfare into an art form. We have created weapons capable of destroying our own world multiple times over. Vextar strikenid. Then you understand the futility of resistance against superior technology. Marcus smiled, and the expression was predatory in a way that made the Admiral's scales ripple with unease. That's just it, Admiral. We don't see it as futile. We see it as Tuesday. Your bravado is meaningless, Vextar replied, but he found himself studying the human more carefully. There was something fundamentally different about this one. The other species they had conquered had shown fear, anger, desperation, or resignation. This human showed none of these things. Instead, he radiated a calm confidence that was deeply unsettling. Let me make you a counteroffer, Marcus said, moving to a control panel that materialized from what had appeared to be empty air. A 4th option that I think you'll find interesting. I told you, there are only 3 options. There were only 3 options, Marcus corrected. But now you're dealing with humans. We specialize in creating new options when we don't like the ones we're given. So here's what I propose. You and I have a proper negotiation. Not your standard 3-choice ultimatum, but an actual discussion between representatives of our respective species. Vextar's laugh was harsh and dismissive. You have no position from which to negotiate. You have no leverage. You cannot threaten us. You cannot harm us. And you cannot escape us. Marcus touched something on his control panel, and suddenly, the display showing Vextar's fleet took on new details. Targeting systems appeared around each ship, and data streams began flowing across the screen, showing detailed technical specifications that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. Can't we? Marcus asked softly. Vextar stared at the display, his 4 hands clenching into fists. This is impossible. Your technology cannot penetrate our shields. Your weapons cannot reach our ships. Admiral, Marcus said, and now his voice carried a note of something that might have been pity. You're thinking in terms of conventional warfare again. Let me ask you something. In your 47 conquests, how many species had developed artificial intelligence? Several, Vextar admitted. Their computers were always inferior to our systems. And how many had developed true human-AI hybrid consciousness? Vextar posts. What? Marcus tapped his temple, and for just a moment, his eyes flickered with patterns of light that definitely weren't natural. I'm not just human, Admiral. I'm something new. Something your empire has never encountered before. I think at the speed of light, I process information like a quantum computer, and I understand warfare in ways that purely biological minds simply cannot. The displays around Marcus lit up with more data, showing not just the Zelkarian fleet, but their entire approach vector, their supply lines, their communication protocols, and what appear to be detailed maps of their command structure. Here's what's going to happen. Marcus continued, his voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. You're going to listen to my proposal. Really listen, not just wait for me to choose one of your three options. Because the fourth option, the one where humanity demonstrates exactly why we're different from every other species you've encountered, isn't something you want to experience firsthand. Vextar found himself leaning forward, drawn in despite his better judgment. There was something about this human that was fundamentally different from any being he had encountered before. Not just the technology, not just the apparent access to classified information, but something in the way he spoke, the way he moved, the way he seemed to exist in the space around him. What were you proposing? Vextar heard himself ask. Marcus smiled again, and this time the expression held genuine warmth alongside the predatory intelligence. I'm proposing that instead of conquering Earth, you work with us. Because, Admiral, you have no idea what humans are capable of when we're motivated to be creative. And right now, your ultimatum has motivated us to be very, very creative. The transmission held steady, but Vextar could hear alarm sounds beginning to echo in the background of his own ship. His communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom. Admiral, we're detecting some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Our sensors can't quite identify them, but they're significant. Marcus didn't break eye contact with the camera. That's just the beginning, Admiral. The warm-up act, you might say. So I'll ask you once more. Are you ready to have a real negotiation? One where we discuss terms that benefit both our species instead of just yours. Vextar stared at the screen, feeling for the first time in his 3 centuries of service that he was facing something truly unknown, something that didn't fit into any of the categories his training had prepared him for. I'm listening, he said finally. Marcus nodded approvingly. Good. Then let's talk. Marcus gestured to an empty chair that materialized from the floor of his command center. Please, Admiral, make yourself comfortable. This may take a while. Vextar remained standing on his bridge, his 4 arms crossed defensively. I will not be deceived by parlor tricks, human. Your holographic projections and sensor spoofing may be impressive by your standards, but they do not change the fundamental reality of your situation. Holographic projections? Marcus asked, tilting his head with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. Arya, show the Admiral what we're really looking at. The displays around Marcus shifted, and suddenly, Vextar was looking at real-time feeds from inside his own ships. Not external views that could have been fabricated, but actual interior shots of Zelkarian crew members at their stations, completely unaware they were being observed. Impossible, Vextar breathed, taking an involuntary step closer to his own screen. Our ships are hardened against all known forms of electronic infiltration. Our security protocols are designed to defend against conventional cyber warfare. Marcus interrupted gently. Admiral, let me explain something about human development. We didn't just advance technologically in isolation. We did it while fighting each other constantly for millennia. Do you know what that creates? Vextar watched in growing alarm as the feeds showed the interior of ship after ship in his fleet, including sections he knew were classified beyond even his own clearance level. What? Innovation born from desperation, Marcus replied. When humans fight each other, we don't just develop better weapons. We develop better ways to think about problems, better ways to approach the impossible. And when you've been fighting your own species for thousands of years, you get very good at understanding how minds work. The Admiral's communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom again. Sir, engineering reports that some of our systems are responding to commands they didn't receive. Nothing critical yet, but it's as if someone is testing our interfaces. Marcus nodded approvingly. Your crew is very observant. Yes, we're running diagnostic tests on your systems. Not to damage anything. We're not savages, Admiral, but to understand them. You see, this is where human thinking differs from what you've encountered before. Ow! Vextar demanded, though he found himself genuinely curious rather than simply angry. Every other species you've conquered approached the problem the same way you do, Marcus explained, moving to a new set of controls that appeared at his touch. They saw your ships, your weapons, your obvious technological superiority, and they thought in terms of force versus force. Military strength against military strength. The displays around Marcus now showed detailed schematics of Zelkarian technology, including weapons systems that were supposedly classified above even Admiral level. They never asked the right question. Which is? Marcus smiled, and for the first time, it was entirely human warmth. They never asked, were these people actually trying to accomplish, and is there a better way to achieve it? Vextar felt something he hadn't experienced since his early days as a junior officer. Genuine confusion about his mission parameters. We are expanding the Empire, bringing order to chaos, civilizing primitive worlds. Are you, Marcus asked, or are you following orders that were designed by someone else, for purposes you've never actually examined? Before Vextar could respond, Marcus touched another control, and the displays shifted to show something that made the Admiral's blood freeze in his veins. Detailed records of the Zelkarian Empire's conquest history, including classified information about resource extraction, population management, and strategic planning that even he wasn't supposed to have access to. Interesting pattern here, Marcus observed, highlighting sections of data. Your empire conquers worlds not for territory, not for population, not even primarily for resources. You conquer them for, what would you call it? Proof of concept. I don't understand. Your empire is run by the High Command, but the High Command answers to the Council of Hierophants, who are apparently engaged in some kind of long-term project involving. Marcus paused, reading data that scrolled past too quickly for normal eyes to follow. Dimensional engineering. Interesting. Vextar's mandibles clicked in shock. That information is restricted to the highest levels of an organization that your admiral rank is actually quite low in, Marcus finished. You're a field operative, Admiral. A very successful one, but still just someone following orders without knowing the full picture. Tell me, in all your years of conquest, have you ever actually met one of these hierophants? The question hit Vextar like a physical blow. In 3 centuries of service, rising through the ranks to command the most successful conquest fleet in the Empire, he had never once been in the same room with any member of the Council of Hierophants. His orders came through intermediaries. His reports went to subordinates of subordinates. That's not relevant, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Marcus asked. Admiral, what if I told you that the Council of Hierophants has been lying to the entire Zelkarian Empire about the purpose of these conquests? What if the species you've been subjugating aren't resources or territory, but test subjects? The displays shifted again, showing complex equations and dimensional models that hurt to look at directly. Your High Command has been using conquered species as experimental subjects, in reality, manipulation experiments. The integration into the Empire that you offer isn't colonization. It's preparation for use as living components in dimensional machinery. Vextar staggered backward, his 4 arms reaching out for support that wasn't there. You're lying. You have to be lying. Arya, Marcus said softly, transmit the dimensional research files directly to Admiral Vextar's personal command console. Authorization, Peacekeeper Protocol 7. The console in front of Vextar lit up with information that made his scales turn pale. Detailed records of what had actually happened to the populations of conquered worlds. Technical specifications for dimensional anchors that required living neural networks. Test results from experiments that had consumed entire species. By the void, Vextar whispered, scanning through data that shattered everything he thought he knew about his life's work. We've been feeding them to the experiments. Not you, Marcus said gently. You've been doing what you thought was right, following orders you believe came from legitimate authority. The field commanders, the ship crews, even most of the High Command, they don't know. Only the Hierophants and their inner circle understand what's really happening. Vextar slumped into his command chair, the weight of 47 worlds pressing down on him. 47 species, billions of beings. We told them they were being integrated, civilized, brought into something greater, and instead we were... He couldn't finish the sentence. You were being used, Marcus said simply. Just like they were. The difference is you can still do something about it. What? Vextar looked up at the screen, his eyes pleading. What can I possibly do? Even if this is true, and part of me knows it is, because it explains so many inconsistencies I never questioned. What can one admiral do against the entire empire? Marcus leaned forward, and his expression became intensely focused. You can choose to be part of something different, something better. Because, Admiral, humans aren't just good at fighting each other. We're also very, very good at fighting for each other when we have a reason. The displays around Marcus changed once more, showing something that made Vextar's breath catch. Technical specifications for ships and weapons that were clearly beyond current human technology, but also clearly human in design philosophy. We've been preparing for this day for longer than you might think, Marcus explained. Not just for contact with alien species, but for the possibility that those aliens might not have humanity's best interests at heart. We've been developing technologies, strategies, and alliances that your empire has never encountered. Alliances? Vextar asked. Did you think you were the only ones asking questions about the Hierophants? Marcus smiled. Admiral, what would you say if I told you that representatives from 15 different species that the Zelkarian Empire has conquered are currently in communication with Earth, and they're all very interested in discussing alternatives to the current arrangement? Vextar stared at the screen as displays showed communication channels connecting Earth to star systems across the galaxy, many of which showed the distinctive energy signatures of supposedly subjugated worlds. This is impossible, he said, but the words carried no conviction. This is humanity, Marcus corrected. We don't accept impossible. We just haven't figured out how to make it work yet. So here's my proposal, Admiral Vextar of the Zelkarian Empire. Instead of conquering Earth for the Hierophant's dimensional experiments, help us liberate the galaxy from them. The bridge around Vextar was silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders that he suddenly wasn't sure he had the authority or the desire to give. What exactly are you proposing? He asked finally. Marcus stood up, and as he did, the entire command center around him revealed its true scope, a facility that stretched far beyond what should have been possible, filled with technology that seamlessly blended human innovation with principles that looked suspiciously like they came from other worlds. I'm proposing that you become the first Zelkarian to join the Galactic Liberation Alliance, Marcus said. And I'm proposing that instead of delivering humanity to the Hierophants as experimental subjects, you help us deliver a message they'll never forget. The transmission held steady as Vextar considered an offer that would change everything he thought he knew about his place in the universe. The silence on Vextar's bridge stretched for nearly a full minute before he spoke again. You're asking me to commit treason against the only authority I've ever known. No, Marcus replied, his voice carrying absolute certainty. I'm asking you to stop committing atrocities for an authority that never deserved your loyalty. There's a difference, Admiral, and I think you're intelligent enough to understand it. Vextar looked around his bridge at the crew members who had served under him for decades. These were good beings, honorable soldiers who believed they were serving a righteous cause. Just as he had believed. The weight of that realization was crushing. Even if I were to consider such a thing, he said slowly, my crew, my fleet, they won't simply abandon their duty because I tell them to. They'll demand proof, evidence beyond what you've shown me. Marcus nodded approvingly. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Arya, initiate contact protocol 5. The displays around Marcus shifted, and suddenly, the command center was filled with additional figures. Not holograms. The image quality was too perfect, the interaction too natural. These were real-time communications with beings scattered across the galaxy. Admiral Vextar, Marcus said, I'd like you to meet some of your former victims. The first figure was tall and ethereal, with features that seemed to shift like flowing water. I am Sarandal of the Aquatic Consortium, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in ways that suggested advanced neural engineering. You conquered our world 8 years ago. Or rather, you thought you did. Vextar's mandibles clicked in recognition. The seventh moon of Kepler, 442. But your people were integrated into the labor force. Your civilization was preserved according to imperial protocol. Sarandal's expression was sad, but not angry. 20 million of my people were taken for integration, Admiral. Do you know how many returned? Vextar's throat constricted. Integration is permanent. That's always been none, Sarandal interrupted gently. None returned, because none survived the dimensional experiments. But we knew something was wrong when the transport ships never came back for the second wave of volunteers. So we started asking questions. Another figure stepped forward, a crystalline being whose body seemed to contain entire galaxies of light. I am Throne Singer of the Resonance Collective, it said, its voice creating harmonic frequencies that made the air itself vibrate. You conquered our harmonic clusters 15 years ago. We lost 3 billion individuals to your integration process before we learned to hide. Impossible, Vextar breathed. The Resonance Collective was completely pacified. Your entire species was accounted for in the integration reports. We're very good at making copies of ourselves, Throne Singer replied. When we realized what was happening to our people, we created harmonic duplicates to send with your transports while our real population went into dimensional hiding. We've been watching ever since, learning about your empire's true purpose. More figures appeared. Beings from worlds Vextar remembered conquering, species he thought had been successfully integrated into the empire. Each one told the same story. Initial compliance, followed by the gradual realization that integration meant death, then desperate measures to preserve their people while appearing to cooperate. This is impossible, Vextar said, but his voice lacked conviction. If so many species survived and were actively resisting, the Hierophants would know. Our intelligence networks would have detected the deception. Marcus stepped forward, drawing attention back to himself. Would they? Admiral, think about your reporting chain. You file reports about successful conquests and integration numbers. Those reports go to your superiors, who compile them into summaries for their superiors, who eventually present sanitized versions to the Hierophants. At what point in that process would anyone actually verify that the integrated populations were still alive? The question hit Vextar like a physical blow. He realized with growing horror that he had never, in 3 centuries of service, personally verified the fate of any conquered population after filing his completion reports. The bureaucracy, he whispered. The entire system is designed so that no one has to confirm the actual results. Exactly, said a new voice. Vextar turned to see another figure joining the communication, a being that looked remarkably similar to his own species, but with scales that shifted color in complex patterns. I am Kethvar of the Zelkarian Resistance, the figure said, and Vextar's blood turned to ice. That's impossible, he stammered. The Resistance was eliminated centuries ago. The Hierophants purged every dissident element from our society. Kethvar's scales rippled in what Vextar recognized as bitter amusement. They eliminated everyone they could find, yes, but some must learn to hide very, very well. We've been working within the Empire for generations, documenting the truth about the dimensional experiments, protecting what populations we could. It was Resistance agents within your own fleet who provided the initial intelligence about the true nature of integration, Marcus added. They've been trying to find a way to stop the Hierophants for centuries. But they needed allies, technology, and a catalyst for change. And Earth provides all 3? Vextar asked. Earth provides something more valuable, Marcus replied. Earth provides hope. Admiral, humans have spent our entire history being told that things are impossible, and then making them possible anyway. We specialize in finding solutions that others have never considered. The displays around them shifted to show technical schematics that made Vextar scales ripple with recognition and awe. Ships that combined the best of multiple species technologies. Weapons that could disrupt dimensional anchors. Communication systems that could coordinate across galactic distances without detection. This is what we've built together, Marcus explained. Not just humans working alone, but every species that the Empire has supposedly conquered, combining their knowledge and their desire for freedom. The Galactic Liberation Alliance isn't just a resistance movement, Admiral. It's a new model for how species can work together. Sarandal stepped forward again. We're not asking you to betray your people. Admiral Vextar, we're asking you to save them. Because eventually, the Hierophants will run out of alien species to experiment on, and they'll start using their own people as test subjects. It's already happening, Kethvar added grimly. The lower castes, the outer colonies, the volunteer programs for dimensional research. The pattern is accelerating. Vextar felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Everything he had believed about his life, his service, his purpose was crumbling around him. But in its place, something else was emerging, a possibility he had never imagined. What would you need from me? He asked finally. Marcus smiled, and there was something almost predatory in the expression. We need you to deliver humanity to the Hierophants, exactly as ordered. What? Vextar's confusion was echoed by several of the other figures in the communication. You're going to report that Earth has chosen surrender, Marcus continued. You're going to request permission to begin standard integration procedures. And then you're going to transport a carefully selected group of humans to the dimensional research facilities. That's insane, Throne Singer protested. Humans cannot survive dimensional experimentation any better than the rest of us. Marcus's smile widened. That's where you're wrong. Humans can't survive it, but I can, and I won't be going alone. The displays shifted to show detailed plans that were breathtaking in their audacity. Not just a rescue mission or a sabotage operation, but a complete infiltration and takeover of the Dimensional Research Network. You see, Admiral, Marcus explained, the Hierophants have been using organic neural networks as components in their dimensional machinery. But they've never tried to use neural networks that were specifically designed to interface with and control dimensional technology. Vextar stared at the plans, his mind reeling with the implications. You're not just planning to destroy their research. You're planning to take control of it. We're planning to liberate it, Marcus corrected. To use their own dimensional technology to reconnect every species they've torn apart, to restore every population they've destroyed, and to create a new kind of galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. And if it fails? Vextar asked. Marcus met his gaze steadily. Then, at least we'll fail while trying to build something better instead of participating in genocide. The communication channel fell silent as everyone present contemplated the scope of what was being proposed. It wasn't just rebellion, it was the complete transformation of galactic civilization. I need time to think, Vextar said finally. Of course, Marcus replied. Take all the time you need. But, Admiral, while you're thinking, remember that every hour that passes, the Hierophants are conducting new experiments. Every day you delay is another day that innocent beings suffer for research that benefits only the few. The communication channel held steady, waiting for Vextar's decision. How long do I have before you need an answer? He asked. Marcus checked something on his displays. The Dimensional Research Facility is expecting a new shipment of test subjects within the next standard week. If we're going to do this, we need to move soon. Vextar nodded slowly. Then, I'll give you my answer within 6 hours. Understood, Marcus said. Admiral, whatever you decide, know that you're a good soldier who was given bad orders. That's not your fault. But what happens next? That's a choice you get to make. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar alone with his crew and the weight of the most important decision in galactic history. 5 hours and 37 minutes later, Admiral Vextar stood before his assembled senior staff in the main briefing chamber of the Dominion's Edge. The weight of 47 conquered worlds pressed on his shoulders as he looked at the faces of beings who had trusted him to lead them in what they believed was righteous service to the Empire. I have called you here to discuss our mission parameters, he began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to propose. But before I continue, I must ask each of you a question that I have never asked before. Do any of you know what actually happens to the populations we integrate into the Empire? The question hung in the air like a charged particle. His second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Krenthak, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, they are relocated to appropriate labor assignments based on their skills and the Empire's needs. Have you ever personally verified this? Vextar pressed. The silence that followed told him everything he needed to know. In 3 centuries of conquest, none of them had ever followed up on the fate of the billions they had delivered to the Empire's integration protocols. I see, Vextar said quietly. Then perhaps it is time you learn the truth about what we have been accomplishing in the name of the Empire. He activated the chamber's main display and began showing them the same evidence that Marcus had revealed to him. The dimensional research files, the experimental records, the true fate of every species they had conquered. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Several officers had to leave the chamber. Others sat in stunned silence as the reality of their unwitting participation in galactic genocide became clear. "By the void," whispered Krenthak, his scales pale with horror. We've been feeding entire civilizations to their experiments." "Yes," Vextar confirmed. "We have, but we didn't know, and we were deliberately kept from knowing. The question now is, what are we going to do about it?" Before anyone could respond, the chamber's communication system activated, and Marcus Kane's image appeared before the assembled officers. But he was no longer alone. Standing beside him was Kethvar of the Zelkarian Resistance. "Admiral," Marcus said, "I take it your officers have been briefed on the situation?" "They have," Vextar confirmed, "and I have made my decision. But this choice cannot be mine alone. Every being in this fleet must understand what we are choosing between." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Then, let me address them directly. Officers of the Zelkarian Imperial Fleet, my name is Marcus Kane, and I represent the Galactic Liberation Alliance. We are offering your Admiral, and through him all of you, the opportunity to join us in ending the Hierophant's reign of terror." Krenthak leaned forward. "What guarantee do we have that this alliance of yours is any better than the Empire? How do we know we're not simply trading one form of tyranny for another?" It was Kethvar who answered. "Because the alliance isn't governed by any single species or authority. It's a cooperative of equals, where decisions are made by consensus among all member species. No one rules, and everyone contributes according to their abilities and needs." "That sounds idealistic to the point of impossibility," observed Chief Engineer Velmar. "How can dozens of different species with different needs and capabilities possibly reach consensus on anything?" Marcus smiled. "The same way humans learn to cooperate with each other despite thousands of years of warfare, by recognizing that we accomplish more together than we ever could apart. But you don't have to take our word for it. Arya, initiate full Alliance Council session." The chamber's displays expanded to show representatives from over 30 different species, all participating in what was clearly a functioning, deliberative body. Vextar watched in amazement as beings with radically different physiologies, communication methods, and cultural backgrounds worked together to solve complex problems. "This is happening right now," Marcus explained. "Every day, in real time, across the galaxy. Species that were supposedly extinct working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. And you want us to help you destroy the dimensional research network that the Hierophants have spent millennia building," Vextar summarized. "Not destroy," Marcus corrected. "Transform. The dimensional technology itself isn't evil. It's how it's being used that's the problem. Instead of using it to tear apart species for experimentation, we can use it to reconnect divided populations, to allow instantaneous communication and travel across the galaxy, to create a truly unified civilization." Sub-Admiral Krenthak stood up, his forearms spread wide. "I don't know about the politics or the philosophy, but I know that we've spent centuries unknowingly participating in genocide. If there's a chance to make that right, to save the species we've helped to destroy, then I say we take it." One by one, the other officers voiced their agreement. Not because they fully understood the implications of what they were choosing, but because they understood that continuing on their current path was unacceptable. "Then, it's decided," Vextar announced. "We join the Alliance. But how exactly do we proceed? My fleet is powerful, but it cannot stand against the entire Empire alone." Marcus's expression became intensely focused. "We don't fight the Empire. We use it. Admiral, you're going to contact the Hierophants and report that Earth has chosen surrender. You're going to request permission to begin standard integration procedures. And you're going to deliver a carefully selected group of humans to their primary dimensional research facility." "Forgive me," interrupted Chief Tactical Officer Zendar, "but that sounds like you're simply volunteering to become experimental subjects yourselves." "That's exactly what it sounds like," Marcus agreed. "But appearances can be deceiving. You see, The humans you'll be delivering aren't just volunteers, they're specially prepared infiltrators. Some, like myself, are human-AI hybrids specifically designed to interface with dimensional technology. Others are carrying quantum viruses that will, once inside the research network, begin rewriting the fundamental control systems. The displays showed detailed technical specifications that made the Zelkarian engineers whistle in appreciation. Quantum-level programming that could rewrite reality itself at the dimensional interface level. Once we're inside the network, Marcus continued, we'll have access to the entire dimensional infrastructure. Every experiment, every research facility, every dimensional anchor point the Hierophants have created. And instead of using them to tear apart civilizations, we'll use them to put those civilizations back together. The rescued populations, Vextar realized, understanding flooding through him. You can actually restore them. Every being that ever died in those experiments exists somewhere in the dimensional data matrix, HFY confirmed. The Hierophants never bothered to purge the quantum information. They just extracted what they needed and discarded the rest. But the quantum signatures are still there, still recoverable. Marcus nodded. We can bring them back. All of them. Every species your empire has conquered, every population you thought you had destroyed, they could be restored to dimensional space, and then re-embodied using the same technology the Hierophants used to kill them. The magnitude of what was being proposed left the assembled officers speechless. Not just rebellion, not just resistance, but the literal resurrection of galactic civilization. There's more, Marcus added. Once we control the dimensional network, we can offer the same choice to every species in the galaxy that we're offering to you. Join the Alliance as equals, or continue under whatever system of government they prefer, but with full knowledge of their options and full protection from exploitation. Including the Zelkarian Empire? Vextar asked. Especially the Zelkarian Empire, HFY said firmly. Most Zelkarians are good people who have been deceived by their leaders. Once they understand the truth about the Hierophants, most will choose to join the Alliance willingly. And if the Hierophants refuse to give up their power? Sub-Admiral Krenthak asked. Marcus's expression became grimly satisfied. Then, they'll discover that humans are very, very good at solving problems that other people insist can't be solved. Vextar stood up, feeling for the first time in centuries that he was about to participate in something genuinely righteous. Very well. Marcus Kane of Earth, on behalf of my fleet and crew, I formally request to join the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Request accepted, Marcus replied, and suddenly, the chamber was filled with the sounds of celebration from dozens of species across the galaxy. Welcome to the Alliance, Admiral. Now, let's go save the galaxy. 2 days later, the Hierophant Council received a standard report from Admiral Vextar confirming the successful negotiation of Earth's surrender and requesting permission to begin integration procedures. The request was approved without question. After all, Vextar had never failed to deliver a conquered population before. What the Hierophants didn't know was that the conquered humans being delivered to their dimensional research facility included not just Marcus Kane and his team of infiltrators, but quantum encrypted data packets containing the consciousness patterns of over 1 trillion beings thought to be dead, and a complete technical specification for transforming the galaxy's most destructive weapon into its greatest tool for peace and cooperation. As Vextar's transport ships approached the research facility, he opened a secure communication channel to Marcus. Any final words before we change the galaxy forever? Marcus smiled, and in that smile was everything that made humanity unique. The refusal to accept defeat, the determination to find new solutions to impossible problems, and the absolute conviction that any system built on the suffering of others could and should be replaced with something better. Admiral, Marcus said they came to negotiate. They just had no idea what humans consider to be negotiable. The transport ships docked with the research facility, and the liberation of the galaxy began.